define the Supreme Court to keep someone in jail. Do you think that's more or less of a signal to civil war than January 6th was?
Oh, I think that's more.
Really?
I think
Define the
that's
Supreme
more.
Court is
Yeah,
more of
yeah,
a
yeah.
signal to openness to civil war than January
I
6th
do.
was.
Yeah, I do. I do. I could give you
Why?
practical. I could give you a practical reason why.
Huh?
I mean, the what happened on January 6th was horrifying, and the risks that day were significant. But that militia versus like the girthy cock of like the United States military, like I think the worst that could have happened that day is that a ton of like Congress people like would have died, and then like the army would have come in and just like massacred them. Like I don't know if it represents. Well, hang on, let me think about this for a second. Hang on.
Because think of what Trump was trying to achieve, right?
No, I
Trump was,
understand.
yeah.
I'm thinking about it. I'm thinking about it. That is tough. I mean, I would say that they're comparable. Like they're comparable. I mean, there's no doubt that Donald Trump was willing to risk civil war on January 6th, and I like that. That's nobody would argue against that. But if you're someone like Newsom and the Supreme Court hands down a decision that says, you know, your case against Trump was unconstitutional, you have to release him from prison, and then Newsom says no, that at that point you are opening a kind of door that is just impossible to close in the short term. And if you're taking that kind of step, then at that point, I don't know why you wouldn't do anything in your power to keep Donald Trump imprisoned or, you know, maintain your own power. Because what happens if you play that out right and then political violence explodes across the country and you got militia people that are fucking kidnapping, state legislature politicians and U.S. representatives and senators. And then at that point, it's like, let's say it's an election year. Do you cancel the election, right? Like what if there's a Republican running and they're polling at 70% because they're disgusted that the Democratic Party is violating the Supreme Court's decision in that kind of way? You know, if you really thought like for the sake of the Republic, I'm willing to defy the Supreme Court and keep Donald Trump in jail, why wouldn't you cancel the election, LonerBox? Like, what if? I mean, just answer that question. Like, would Newsom be justified in canceling an election if he was in an election year and his Republican opponent shot up to 80% in the polls after the Supreme Court decision?
Well, no, obviously, because elections, I think, are integral to, like, I value fair and free elections much more highly than I do the particular people who make a decision in the Supreme Court, unfortunately.
But if the Republican wins, they're going to pardon Donald Trump and let him out of jail, right?
Oh, they're running on that.
Well, that would obviously happen.
Okay. Suspending election. I still think because I still think that's probably a harder question. I still don't think. I think I'm justified in finding that a harder question because elections are much more integral to liberalism and democracy than Supreme Court decisions are. Personally, but I'm still. I don't know if that's probably the best answer I'm gonna give right now. But I'm still thinking, like, going back to the question about. It's maybe easier for you to say what you said about January 6th and Newsom ignoring the Supreme Court because Trump failed on January 6th. But you remember what he was trying to do, right? He was perfectly greenlighting kidnapping legislators. The softest version of what he wanted was to delay for a long enough period the vote certification so they could move on and pressure people even harder. He also wanted Mike Pence to just make him president on the day.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm just
our institutions. I'm thankful that our institutions held that day.
Mike Pence held, really. Like that's the big game changer there. Like it's so much of that was just like in the hands of one person, really.
Not just him. It was also Republican lawmakers and politicians at the state level that refused to go along with the elector schemes in like several states that were governed by Republicans. But I just, respectfully, I don't understand the logic of I would be willing to defy a Supreme Court order and keep a man imprisoned after they said that it was unconstitutional for him to be imprisoned, and then not cancel an election if my popularity dropped down to 15% and then Vance is pulling at like 80%. Like, why would you do one but not the other? Like, why would you violate a Supreme Court? You seem to be
because I value elections. Because I value elections more than the Supreme Court, more than the the Supreme Court making an obviously brain rotted decision.
But before you,
like, do you see how? Because in one example, like the Supreme Court is literally making a very just like, to me, a fundamentally like illiberal decision. Like, there's just no accountability for being the president who basically who was happy to fuck the Constitution and would have like ruled by decree if he could.